Miami Sports Always from two homies in Miami.
What's up, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon. This is the Sports Spectator Podcast. We got a special guest on today, Middle Tennessee State University punter Kyle Ulbrich. He's been sitting outside the Dolphins facility looking to get on the roster this season. Kyle, it's great to have you. If you don't mind giving an introduction of yourself, maybe where you're from, your experience punting there, and what you are doing outside of the Dolphins facility right now.
Yeah, for sure. I was a one-year starter at Valparaiso, then transferred to Middle Tennessee State for 4 years of the rest of my career. I spent the past year and a half down training in Key West with the fiance, attending all the free agent combines, all the camps and showcases and everything I could do, to get my name and, talents out there. So, I just figured I would take it a step further and just try, see what kind of fish I can catch in a widespread net camping outside the Dolphin Stadium.
Nice. No, that's awesome, bro. Again, thanks so much for attending today's episode. Yeah, man. I mean, before we get started, obviously, we want to talk about sports. We definitely want to hear about your punting experience at MTSU. Super hyped to hear it. I guess other than that, man, we definitely just want to hear a little bit more as far as an introduction goes. I mean, if you want to tell us a little bit about your stats, maybe some interesting experiences about MTSU, definitely what would be your ideal situation with the Dolphins, man. I think the audience would love to hear about it.
Yeah. I spent my career at MTSU coming in as a walk-on first 2 seasons, 3 semesters. I had to, set the school record for, yards, average in a season to be put on scholarship. And, every year, I progressed. I went from a 40-yard average to a 43 to a 44, and then finally finished with a 47. Second nationally, top 5 in the nation for inside the 20, led the nation for most punts over 50 yards. I think I was top 10, number 9 in the nation for net. It was just one of those things, and I took every opportunity I could and ran with it. The opportunity Coach Stock gave me, the scholarship, I made the most of it. Took, as much preparation and commitment to the program as I could to put myself in the best possible position. Coming out of it as I think it was 6 years in college to put myself in the best position to be in the NFL. And the opportunity eluded me. It's nothing, I can control. It's, all about what the coaches like, the GMs, who they see as the best possible fit for their organization. So, it's not something I can control, but it's just something that right now I can make myself, a position to where, you can see me, I'm out here, and if you got to bring me in for a workout, I'm 5 feet away, 6 lanes of traffic across. So if something happens, they need me. Another team, any other league needs me. I'm here. Hopefully this kind of takes me from, this guy finishes, in the top of every one of these free agent combines, and it takes him from a light of that to, well, now he's out here and he has a pretty decent, click with the Dolphins fan base. So, why not just bring him in for an opportunity, bring him in for competition against Jake Bailey or, whoever else the current incumbent is, and hopefully, bring a shot and just something that if this does end today, I can say I got my opportunity. But until then, it's going to be hard to hang up the cleats until that opportunity presents itself.
Nice. I've got a lot of questions from that, but I want to start more at the core, going back in time. So I have 2 or 3 personal friends of mine that have been punters in college and whatnot, and their stories are very different. So hearing your story just now, being a walk-on, having to prove yourself for a scholarship, transferring, that's a lot to go through as like a young adult. So I'm curious what was your story getting into punting? Like, did you come from like soccer? Did you always punt growing up, or what was that experience like finding the position and then really digging into it and wanting to make a career out of it?
Yeah, it was one of those things I picked up because our little league team, I think it was, I want to say somewhere around 4th or 5th grade. So we just needed a punter on the team. You didn't really punt that often. It was one of those things you would take the snap under center, take 5 steps back and then kick, and then once you kicked it, everybody went after the returner. So it wasn't something that happened often, but it was just one of the things the team needed. So we all held tryouts, and I somehow ended up winning it, amongst everybody else on the team. So that's how I got into it. I played quarterback and wide receiver for as long as I can remember, up until my freshman year of high school. And when I was young, I think it was my first or second year in football, is when I was out there practicing on the football field, and the head coach of the high school at the time came out. He was like, hey, if there's a way you're going to earn a scholarship, it's going to be kicking the football. So, it just stuck with me, stuck with my dad, because he was the one out there with me. And, we just rode with it, went to the instructional camps until I was good enough to, really take it on my own and kind of run with it. So that's kind of how I got into it. And, it led to where I'm at now, so I can't really say I regret it.
Nice. So when you were telling the story about like transferring and stuff, it kind of sounds like punters and kickers actually are harder to get scholarships for. Middle Tennessee State University is not like a Power 5 program, but it is a major D1 school. They play against all major schools every year. So is it actually kind of hard to get a punter scholarship or kicker scholarship, with that being said?
I would say most of the time, yes. A lot of the times it's just something coaching staffs put on the back burner, unless it's, a kid who has pretty good numbers, or he's a really tall kid, so he has all of the, I guess, intangibles for a specialist. He's got them long levers. It looks like he'll transition to the college level pretty quickly. Those are normally the kids who come out of high school with offers, like scholarships. Outside of that, it's one of those things, one kicker, one punter, one long snapper on the team has the scholarship, and until he graduates, they're not going to burn another scholarship on the specialist, especially an unproven one at that, because we had a kid, he came in as a transfer at MT on scholarship, and I want to say he lost a job in camp to a freshman. I think he was a freshman who didn't have a scholarship. He was a walk-on technically.
Wow.
So, if they're unproven on the school, there's a lot of other stuff. It could be your holder, it could be your snapper, it can be, the scheme they run, which isn't really different to different, but, it can mess you up. So these coaches, they don't want to bring a guy in if, one, they don't fit the kind of style they do, or they're just unproven. Because you can have a fluke year in college, and then the rest of it can be either very average or mediocre, and then they find your replacement. But until then, you're stuck on scholarship. It can be an unproven one-star that all of a sudden turns into a third-round draft pick that, you get the scholarship over of. So it's just one of those things. It's difficult, but understanding it makes sense. But it's tough for sure.
No, dude, absolutely. I feel like it's definitely a position that it's very much underappreciated, in my opinion. And it's teams with elite punters makes a huge difference. I feel like if you're a casual watcher of football, you tend to think that it might not necessarily be a position that, again, may not be making a difference. But the teams that with elite punters, it really is. It can come down to the elite punts. And I think to your point, Kyle, it definitely can be a situation that it sounds like it's incredibly difficult at times to get a scholarship. And again, if you're not performing at that elite level, your job can be taken, or at least that is what I interpreted. That it's tough. It's incredibly tough.
Yeah.
So I am curious, because you did mention it, and obviously we're a Miami sports page, we're a Miami sports podcast. So you mentioned Jake Bailey, and immediately you kind of brought in one of the questions that I'm just dying to ask you. So during the offseason, I think one of the most clear memories that I have from this recent offseason was the first move that got made was that the Dolphins re-signed Jake Bailey, which was a little bit controversial because it was the first news that came out during the offseason before anything else. So a lot of the Dolphins fan base was, very much up in arms about that being the first thing that comes out. But more than anything, I think it was also, realistically speaking, Jake Bailey didn't seem to have the most sensational year in the past year. And I think that was primarily the reason why most fans were kind of up in arms about that particular situation, especially since we had Thomas Morstead before that, who, in my opinion, is definitely top 5 punters in the league. Again, maybe you might know a little bit better, but what are your thoughts on our current punting situation with Jake Bailey in Miami? I definitely want to hear as someone who potentially could be our punter in the future.
Yeah, and hopefully you're right, and hopefully I can get that opportunity. When I first saw the contract extension, my one friend who's a Dolphins fan pretty much all of his life sent it to me, and he was kind of surprised by it. And not really so much that, he got his extension, but, as far as punters go, it's a little hefty on the signing bonus. So you would think he did, a great thing in the past season. Nothing taken away from it. The NFL is a hard place to play. But, it was one of those things where it wasn't his best season. And, a lot of the fans allude to all these other stats and stuff that you can measure. But I know I read a lot of articles. They said he was a really good holder. He mingled well with Sanders. So, all that stuff kind of adds into it. And I know Morstead, when you guys, I don't know if you guys traded him or just let him in the free agency, but I know he was at the age where I think he played about 10 seasons or so on the Saints. And at that point, you got to pay someone the vet minimum. So I think when that kind of played into it, I don't know if they were counting pennies on the cap space or, all the other kinds of stuff. So whether they trade him or kept him, I think it was one of those things where, you could bring in somebody younger. But I think that's the same situation I'm trying to put the Dolphins in now, is that they had Michael Turk last year, and great of a career he had in college. From what I heard from players on the team to, other punters around the NFL, they said he didn't have that best of a training camp. And I saw him out there at Arizona, and, I outperformed him. And if that's what he did on the Dolphins, then I understand why they went with Bailey. And the way I outperformed him, I'm just curious on if that would have outperformed Bailey as well. Because, it was pretty lopsided. And, if it's one of those things where, Bailey kind of snuck by, or, Turk had a bad, showing, it can play into, why they went with one person over the other. So it just kind of makes me think that, if that could have been me there, if I could have had that opportunity, and they didn't bring anybody in to challenge him this season, whether that was a free agent, whether that was a rookie. So my thinking is, nobody's out there competing with him. I'm sure he's good of a punter as any, but, bring in some competition. The worst case scenario bringing me in is either one, I'm not good enough, or two, you either got to trade him or cut him. And I don't know why, the NFL is a matter of inches. So if I can give you a few more yards, I don't know why you wouldn't want to at least take the chance. But I'm not, paying the bills or making the calls. I'm just trying to get an opportunity, so I can understand it. But
no, I 100% agree. And I definitely, again, I agree with that take 100%. Jake Bailey, again, what I saw every single time that we were trying to pin the opposing offense, it was very tough to get them inside the 20. I feel like every time we punted it, they were always starting on the 30-yard line, 40-yard line a lot. So it's just like, I'm a big believer that if you're having to punt as opposed to going for it on fourth down, it's inexcusable for you to not consistently be pinning the offense within the 20-yard line. Again, if it's a situation where it's not every single punt we're having that, I get it. It's a unrealistic ask for me to ask that of the special teams unit to always have it inside in 20. Like, I understand it's hard. The NFL is freaking difficult. But yeah, it's the performance I saw from Jake Bailey. It left a lot to be desired, man. And like you said, NFL is a game of inches. And when you're not consistently putting someone inside the 20, especially when you have other teams that are constantly doing that, I think the Bills especially, they were awesome at that. Pretty much a lot of people in the AFC are really good about punting inside the 20. And when you got a conference like the AFC, where it's the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Bills, now apparently the Jets are Super Bowl favorites again. If you don't have a special teams unit that can constantly put people inside the 20, I think even inside the 10 is now starting to become like the norm. To your point, you need to bring in someone else to be more competitive. So I definitely agree. When I saw the Jake Bailey news, I definitely was one where I said, I'm not seeing the vision here, guys. Like, what did Jake Bailey do to really deserve like this level of a sign-in? Maybe there's something that's happening inside the organization, inside training camp that I'm not aware of. But yeah, I think it really should be a position that should be up for grabs. And I feel like Kyle, just looking at your stats compared to a lot of other punters that were drafted, I feel like that's fair. Hot take for the day? Maybe yes, maybe no.
I want to step in here because I like first of all your pitch. Like it's a great idea. Like at least bring competition to Jake Bailey. I think that's completely appropriate. It's the best thing to say probably too. I also like the confidence I'm starting to feel from you. So I want to ask some questions. Yeah, I want to ask some questions that kind of go into that. So I mean, this season, are you a Miami Dolphins fan, or who's your childhood NFL team growing up?
Oh yeah, this might get interesting depending on the answer.
He's gonna say Patriots.
Well, the past 2 years, I've tried to stay out of that. I grew up in Cleveland, so it's always been everything Cleveland. But once I went through the whole process, every relationship I had to the Browns kind of went out the window because it's like if I'm not on the team, you're not paying my bills, and I can care less.
Okay, so that's fair. Good answer, and also completely respectable because the Browns. I can't imagine a more brutal franchise to be a fan of. So, all right. So the Dolphins, obviously a huge season coming up this year. The name of the game last season was just big games. I don't think we won a single one of them. Maybe the Bills game during the season you could consider, but just no big games. And the Cowboys, I guess. But as a Cowboys fan, I understand the impact of that statement is less for that exact reason as Cowboys. All right, so punters are huge in these big moments, these big games. Like they make all the difference. So playing at Middle Tennessee, you guys played against a ton of Power 5 schools, big name schools. And I'm sure there was games where you guys were getting beat up and you're punting all the time and the team's giving up and you got these huge linemen coming at you. So how do you handle those moments of stress? Can you reflect back onto one of those big game moments that maybe stays with you the most and just kind of walk us through how you keep your composure and confidence and just what it's like in those moments?
Yeah, a lot of the times it's kind of like if there was a way to allude to it, I guess it would be a relief pitcher coming in the blowout. What you do probably doesn't really affect the game, but at the same time, these are your stats. This is what you're being graded off of and all these other kinds of things. So, you really got to take each moment for what it is and kind of push out whatever the situation is. And what I would tell the specialist unit every year, because we had a pretty young unit who didn't have experience, they weren't transfers, they were guys coming in out of high school. And I would tell them, we would come in off the game field to the practice field, and, they'd be sweating, they'd be busting their tails all practice. And I'm like, well, listen, you guys see what they're doing right now. They're out here sweating, they're out here, killing themselves to make them, a better athlete for the season. And, that comes into when you're playing a game. It's 60 minutes of football, offense, defense, all of these other kinds of sides coming in to switch out reps. And, they're beat after these games. They're getting ice baths, treatment, everything under the sun to make their bodies feel better to go to sleep that night. And, as specialists, you come out there for 5-second, 10-second plays, and you got to make sure what you do makes what they just beat themselves up for worth it. If it's a final 80-yard drive in 2 minutes, down 1 point, you need a field goal, that snap, hold, and kick, you're doing it for your stats and all these other kinds of things, and you practice for it. But the situation you always got to put yourself in is if those guys just drove those 80 yards in those 2 minutes to put you in that situation to make that kick, you're doing it for them. You have to make sure everything they just did is worth it. Because if you miss, all of a sudden that's all thrown out the window and you're the one being highlighted on the newspaper as the bad guy. And everything they just worked for is, thrown out the window. And I always tried to make sure that was present in my mind, in that, it wasn't about me or my stats. It was always about putting the team in the best possible position to win. And that could be, trying to force a ball inside the 5 rather than just the 20, or putting a little bit of extra height, or worrying about more accuracy depending on what kind of returner we're playing against, what kind of, gunner is on the right side with the DB. If he's going to be jammed up, you got to either put some height on it or put it on the sideline. So, it's all just recognition of these things and being able to help out your team in the best possible way so that, like I said before, what they just did is worth it. Because the worst feeling is coming back to the sideline. If you can control it, you'd give yourself a 66-0 every time. But some things are out of your control, and, you just kind of have to, eat it sometimes. But really, when you step on the field, it's not about you. It's about all, 50, I guess in the NFL, 52 other guys that, helped get to that position to put you on the field.
Oh, dude, absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, punting, when it's sensational, it makes all the world a difference. And then pretty much you said it perfectly. When you have a play that goes wrong, suddenly now you're the bad guy in that situation. So it's tough. And I mean, it's like kickers and punters, you have less than 30 seconds to pretty much perform. And when you're clutch in that situation, everyone absolutely loves you. But then if you happen to be the one individual that, again, in the kicker, if you miss the game winning kick, now suddenly you're the bad guy. I mean, I feel like just thinking about that, I'm thinking to the double doink in the Chicago game against I believe it was the Eagles. The kicker's name is escaping me right at this moment. He went to Auburn. He used to be our kicker. Shoot, what was his name?
Cody Parkey.
Cody Parkey, yes. Oh my goodness. I literally just erased his name from my memory too. But yeah, man, that was a situation that poor guy, Cody Parkey, he had the double doink in that game. And I think he just instantly became a bad guy in like the entire Midwest because of that. And you really gotta feel for him, man, because he only has these like couple seconds. That probably wasn't a situation that he had been in the past. And for you to not get one but two double doinks to basically like, nobody remembers what happens before before the kick that put the team in that situation. People only remember that like, hey, you as the kicker didn't do their job. So it's freaking tough, dude. So I 100% get it that if you have like a bad play, that's the only thing that everyone's going to remember. So it's tough, bro. I am very curious. I mean, like John said, Middle Tennessee, again, still playing at a very, very high level. So I kind of want to know, do you have any particular memory where maybe there was a game or maybe there was a particular play that, this is like your top play or your most memorable one? I'm very curious to hear it myself.
Yeah, I don't think I have a specific play. I mean, I remember the big boots and a few times putting the ball on the 1 yard line, but I guess if I were to put it in the games, I forget what year it was, but we were playing at FIU. It was a close game. It was we score, they score, and it was just one of those things. And I think I had 2 punts inside the 5 yard line in the fourth quarter. And it really helped, give us that extra edge. And then my junior year at MTSU, we were playing in the Bahamas Bowl. And I think I put 2 or 3 punts inside the 5 yard line, but they were punts that didn't even give the team an opportunity to catch it. They didn't even give us an opportunity to down it. They were just straight coffin corner, out of bounds, inside the 10 yard line. And I mean, those helped us in the game that we weren't projected to win. And then obviously the Hawaii Bowl too, second all-time FBS bowl game performance, 54.1 yard average. I was 3 yards away from J.K. Scott's, Ohio State, Alabama performance that everybody remembers. 3 yards away from it, which sucks. But I remember we had negative yards on offense in that first half, and we were just fighting for yards because our defenses, both teams, were really just going at it the entire game, and that was one of those games decided by an extra few yards. And it was just one of the games I was able to help with my hand in it.
So was that your last game as a college athlete, your best one in that bowl game? That's awesome. That's I feel like that's a huge thing too to kind of sell it for yourself. It's like the Dolphins, where it's like I'm just continuing to get better. Like one of the biggest games of your career probably was literally one of the best games of all time, right? Really, in the punter's perspective. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Is that kind of how you look at it? Like who'd you guys play in that game?
San Diego State.
Awesome.
Oh, and
cool,
they had that elite punter a while back.
Ariza's on the Chiefs now, and I think Jack Browning, he was the punter I went up against that game. I think he was on the Bills. I think they just released him a few days ago.
Yeah, and I remember the Chiefs picked him up. But yeah, he was a punter that had like a crazy good career. I mean, he got the nickname, I think it was Punt God, because he like legitimately was that good. And again, if you're someone who like appreciates football and you look at that and you can see a guy like that consistently can punt in that direction, it's like you're like, holy shit, that's really, really crazy that you're able to consistently do that. I am curious though, why did you decide on the Dolphins as the team that was going to provide you as potentially the team to give you that opportunity to step into the next level? Like, why the Dolphins and maybe not someone that was more near your college, like the Titans, for example?
Well, the Titans had the opportunity, and I think when they did what they did with the whole the whole Stonehouse injury, it kind of let me know they didn't care about me. And, Stonehouse got hurt. They brought in 8 other punters, a couple of guys who hadn't played in the past year, a couple of guys who, got the opportunities for one reason or the other. And they went with a guy who didn't really have a great collegiate career. And honestly, how he got his opportunities in the NFL eludes me. But, it was one of those things, they had me in for their local day for the Titans. And when Stonehouse got hurt and they didn't bring me in, I figured, well, that's a wash right there. Obviously, when Stonehouse gets, healthy, he'll be fine. They're not going to need anybody else. But as far as the Dolphins' decision, what played into it was, in part, I had a friend up here who I thought I was going to be able to stay with who kind of backed out on that. So I had to spend a few extra bucks getting some hotels and Airbnbs, which kind of sucked. But that was part of the decision. But the main reason was, they had Michael Turk last year, undrafted free agent, signed him, brought him in for training camp. And, I said what I said about that, as far as why they went with Bailey. But, the Dolphins finished, I think it was in the bottom 5 of punting statistics, or at least in most statistics in the punting category. And the other teams surrounding them, above them or below them in the rankings, all either brought in guys, cut the guy they had, or drafted someone. So when you have all the guys around them bringing in talent to compete for the job, and the Dolphins, obviously extended Bailey's contract, I'm like, well, I mean, it's a long shot. They're going to have to deal with dead cap. They're going to have to deal with a few other things. But, worst case scenario, they bring me in for a workout. I kill it. But they're like, hey, we don't want to do the whole, charade with, messing with the contracts and trading and cutting. But
right.
we'll put in a good word for you for other teams if they need someone. I mean, that's all it takes, to get in the carousel of specialists in the NFL. So that's really where the whole idea came from. Obviously, I understand it's a long shot, getting on any team camping out this way, especially as a specialist. But it's just one of those things. They don't have a guy to compete with Bailey, and just getting an opportunity and, competing. And even if I had better numbers, it would be a long shot for them to decide him over, or me over him. 1, he has the experience. 2, he has the contract, and, he's been on the team. So there's a lot that plays into it. But worst case scenario, me thinking getting a workout and doing well, was that they would just put in a good word, and I can get into the carousel for punters, and that would just change the trajectory of my career, honestly.
So let's say hypothetical scenario. Let's say that the Dolphins were to put you side by side, and maybe it would be 2 tests, and let's say the winner of both these tests were to get the punting position. So in a situation where maybe you had to go 40-yard dash versus Jake Bailey, and also 1 kick to win it all, whoever gets it most inside the field off a punt, obviously not having a touchback, do you think that you could beat Jake Bailey in a 40-yard dash and in a punting competition?
I mean, I'd have enough adrenaline to kill a horse, but I would try to beat him. I mean, my 40 last time I ran it seriously was a 4.9, but ever since, that, I mean, I'm barely breaking a 5.0.
You're like, I broke shape. 5, I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in shape, I'm training, but I have never been fast. That's why my wide receiver career got cut short. So I don't know if I'm beating him in the 40, but I mean, punting, as far as punting goes, I'll beat him in it.
So do you think, like one-on-one with him, if the goal was to get it inside the 5 against Jake Bailey, do you get that? Do you win that battle? One punt.
Something I train all the time. I mean, I always joke around. Sometime I got the field crew down in Key West. Sometimes they're out there, and I'm like, just give me a yard line, and I always try to come within like 3 yards of the yard line, and most of the time I do. So I mean, I practice it. I try to get the bounces and stuff like that, and I try to do whatever I can to, if that opportunity comes, I'll be ready.
I think I've heard enough. I need Jake Bailey out. That's it. We need elite punter, and I'm willing to say this on record. Yeah, Jake Bailey, again, I feel like he had his opportunity last season. And let's be real, in the NFL, I think it's very rare to get consistent second opportunities. I have a conspiracy theory. I feel like there's a conversation that must have happened for him to have gotten this contract, because again, I would be perfectly fine in saying, listen, Jake Bailey had a stellar season last year, but that simply wasn't the case. And to your point, Kyle, like the contract that he got, it doesn't make sense to me. So no, I think it's all fair to bring in the competition. I feel like you could give Jake Bailey a huge run for his money, and at the very least, like you said, best case scenario, have the Dolphins organization reconsider this contract with Jake Bailey and bring in some competition, such as yourself. Or worst case scenario, at the very least, see that you do in fact fall within the same level of talent as Jake Bailey, even as other punters in the league, and at the very least put in a good word for you for other teams. So yeah, it baffles me, the Jake Bailey situation. And like I said before, when that was the first thing that I heard during the offseason, I was like, no way, bro. Like, is this really, like, we're extending a guy who had that season?
I mean, I gotta give the credit to the agent. Let's find out who he is. I have a question. So, I mean, yeah, it's all about the network that you've been talking about, as far as like, maybe if you can play with the Dolphins, they'll give you a better chance. So, like, have you made contact with anyone like in the NFL sphere at that level? Like, I don't know, like how does that work? Like, how do you even find that?
No, I mean, high up organization level individuals, I haven't had contact with any of them. No agents, have reached out either. And honestly, worst case scenario coming out here, I was thinking at the very least I'd be able to sign, to some agent who enjoys publicity, because a lot of the times, big agents don't sign specialists, let alone free agents. They just sign guys who, hey, this guy's going to get another contract. Let me just get 1% of that. So that's really the way the thinking goes. As far as like a free agent, let alone a specialist, you really got to grind, either get the money or, get him in on a team for a workout or something like that. So I figured it would be kind of hard, but I was hoping, some agency would reach out, or, just any team from literally any league. I mean, even if it's European football paying, I think it's like $20,000 or $25,000 a year. I mean, I'll go make a 15-hour flight to go prove myself. Like, I'm not above it. So, but everything's outside of my realm. I'm just putting a lot of weight in the Dolphins' hands. Hopefully, something can come from this.
Yeah. Do you know
Stephen
any
Ross,
other?
I mean, we know you're listening, bro. Like, come on. Like, he's an avid listener of the podcast. Don't ask me how I can prove it, but I just know that he listens to it. So, Stephen Ross, when you listen to this episode, listen. Special team units needs a little bit of competition. The punting position, especially. Please give our boy Kyle a shot. That's all we ask. Thanks, Stephen.
Juan, I want to steal your question because I want to hear the answer to it. What do you think about the new kickoff rules this season?
Oh, yeah. We definitely want to.
I think it's funky. I think it takes a lot of stress off the kicker, though, because they don't have to worry about pounding it out of the end zone. So, good on the kickers for not having to, kill the ball every time. But, I mean, it's funky for sure. I understand the safety and, like, getting more returns out of it, but it's weird. It's probably going to take a few years to adjust, like, visually watching the games. But, I mean, that's really all I got. It's just a funky thing to see.
Yeah.
Do you think it overall was going to make the game better potentially? Because looking back when they first introduced it, their whole justification was the injuries and that there wasn't enough returns whenever the kick was done. Like, do you think it is going to ultimately make the game more exciting, which is what the league wants?
It might. I mean, it's going to cause more returns, but I mean, from what I saw in the preseason games, it's just guys running 20, 15 yards until they're stopped. So I mean, it turns a pretty much empty play into at least 5 seconds of something. So
yeah.
So instead of like an extra timeout or like an extra time for fans to either use the restroom or like get a snack, I mean, it gives them something to watch. So, I mean, I enjoy it. It's definitely something to spice up the game. But I've seen a lot more changes in the past 5 years than I ever remember in football. It's just kind of weird to see. But, they're trying to innovate the game. So, I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
Not for me to decide anyway.
Just keep kicking.
Yeah, just keep kicking. So we definitely wanted to hear the answer on that, because I feel like, having a guy like you that has played the game, I know John and myself look incredibly athletic, but to your surprise, you're probably surprised to hear the fact that we did not play D1 football, obviously. So definitely really here to hear from your perspective, obviously being a guy that was in the trenches. So I feel like your take on it is a lot more applicable than ours. Um, I mean, I saw it during the Hall of Fame game, and I think to your point, it was weird. Like it felt that suddenly, you're like dating someone new, like seeing the kickoff for the first time. Like you're so used to seeing a particular lineup, and then seeing this new thing, you're like, what's going on? So yeah, I think it's probably going to be something that takes a little bit of used to. There's probably going to be some coach out there that is going to find a way to take advantage of it. But speaking of new rules, I just recently heard this, and I unfortunately didn't have enough time to look into it. But I think there's also, I don't know if it's an actual rule change that's going to happen or if it's one that's being proposed. But now they're also changing the onside kick rule, where, as you know, it used to be a situation you could opt in to kick onside whenever you felt it. So it added that nice level of trickery. So I think now with the new rule, you can only do it in the fourth quarter, if I remember correctly, and you have to explicitly announce to the other team that you're going to be doing an onside rule. So that, in my mind, it's like, all right, you're doing the new kickoff to make the game more exciting, but now you're taking this other layer of potential excitement because, again, there was always like coaches that kind of opted to do a little bit of trickery with the onside. What are your thoughts on that with the new onside rule, at least?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things that rarely happened for an onside kick to, be kind of thrown in there. I know McAfee did it and a few other guys have done it. I mean, I don't really understand the purpose of having to declare it or not being able to do it until the fourth quarter. I mean, obviously with the new rules, it makes sense because how would you kick the onside kick when your guys are 50 yards downfield? So, I mean, I get it, but it's still – it's just different. I mean, it's just, I guess, their way of adapting to the new the new kickoff rules. Because I mean, there would be technically no way to do an onside kick without that, unless you just hit a squib kick in the back of your own guys.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get it. I mean, like you guys said, it just takes something out of the game, but it kind of makes sense, I guess. So. I'm indifferent.
Did you ever successfully perform, did the team ever successfully manage to get the ball back on an onside kick during your time at MTSU?
No, not when I was at MT. I remember there was one time in high school, though, we were supposed to hit a squib kick, and we were supposed to hit – we were supposed to hit a squib kick, and I accidentally drilled one of the frontline guys. The ball bounced off his helmet, and we recovered it. Totally
Nice.
Not supposed to happen. I think we were beating them by like 30 points or something, so it looked bad. But, I mean, I got chewed out for it. That was the extent of my surprise onside kick, career.
But isn't that what you kind of always hope happens on an onside kick? It's like the hope is you do the squib, it gets like a nice odd bounce, and then the guy trying to catch it obviously can't catch it, so it gives you an opportunity to recover it. So I feel like, if anything, you should have gotten credit for that because you in theory, successfully executed what you always try to do during an onside kick.
Kind of. But, I mean, I can see the reason being chewed out on that one. But, yeah, I mean, onside kicks and squibs, I mean, it's definitely an art. Some guys got it and some guys don't. And for the guys who don't or the guys who do, I mean, a lot of practice goes into it. A lot of people think kickers and punters, just sit around. But a lot of the ones who take their onside kick game seriously, they put a few hours a day into their onside kicks.
Oh, yeah, man. Like I said, if for casual watchers of football, I think they very much underappreciate the value of a punter and a kicker. But it's like, if you're someone who you appreciate the game to like a higher level, like you appreciate someone who can kick really, really well, you appreciate someone who can punt really, really well. And I 100% agree. I mean, the few times, like when you do see guys that can successfully execute an onside kick, that's worth its weight in gold, man. Because watching a successful onside kick, it gets the blood pumping. It gets me pumped whenever like those few couple of times that you do get to see it. So it is upsetting to me that they decided to go with that. No fun league strikes again, but it is what it is. All right. So a question that I'm also dying to ask you, because, you being a guy that was in the trenches, I'm very curious to know who your top 3 kickers and who your top 3 punters are. I'll start off with saying mine, and I definitely want to hear yours. To me, top 3 kickers, Top three kickers, I would say McPherson, Carlson, and the Ravens kicker as well. Those are my top three. My top three kickers. I would say top three punters for myself: McAfee, uh, Tommy Townsend, and Hecker are probably my top three punters if I had to name them. So I'm definitely curious on yours. Maybe we have some of the same ones.
Are you going all time, or are you going like currently?
I'm just saying, yeah, all time for me, like not
Yeah.
current.
For the ones I remember, I guess I'll go, like as far as growing up, I'll go Vinatieri, Tucker, and
Ooh,
Phil Dawson.
military.
And as far as punters go, I mean, Shane Letcher. Honestly, AJ Cole's young, but AJ Cole is going to end up being one of the top guys, the Raiders guy. And I mean, Hecker's a good one. Yeah, I mean, I'll go Hecker. I'll go Hecker.
Who's a punter that you have kind of like found yourself looking to for the most reference as far as like practice and technique and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, as far as all that goes, and I have a kicking coach down in Alabama, and he works with these guys too. And I told him, I'm like, because that question kind of comes up a lot. Your college coaches and stuff like that ask you, but my answer's always been like, man, it's kind of a little arrogant to say, but I've never looked to these guys as like for help on this. I've always kind of had my own kind of thing. I went to these coaches, and sometimes they would bring up film of other guys and be like, "Hey, you see what he's doing here? You should probably implement that." But it's always been one of those things like, I took their advice because a lot of it's just cut and dry. Drop the ball here. You want to have a certain arm coming back, your leg coming straight. So a lot of times it's just drill work and stuff like that to feel whatever you're most comfortable with. So that's just kind of how it's always been for me, at least. I'd never had a guy where I'd watch him or like analyze his stuff and be like, I could do that. A lot of the times, they're taller dudes, and I'm sitting here at 6 foot, so it's kind of hard to implement what they do anyway. But if there's one guy I would say I'd be the closest to as far as form and everything like that goes, it would be Jake Camarda on the Bucks. I remember when he was playing for Georgia, I'd see some of his highlights and stuff, and I'd be like, he can smoke a ball when he needs to. And it's always been kind of the closest, around the same height and all this other kinds of stuff. Granted, he runs, I think, like a 4.40, and I run a 5 flat, so, it's a little different. But that's probably the closest I can get.
I want to take your question, Juan, and take it a step further. Just in regards to kind of as we turn the corner in this interview, I think we're kind of wrapping up now, and speaking about confidence and dreams and what you're trying to get done. If you could visualize, if you have not already, your dream moment that would be happening in this season if you were to get signed, what is something that you can visualize and kind of start imagining could be happening this season for you?
Yeah, I think it all starts with, just initially coming out of that tunnel. Not so much for warm-ups, but like when you're fully suited out, game's about to start, kickoff's about to happen. I think that's when the dream becomes a reality. Because once you step on the field, you got to put, and I've trained this all my life, you step on the field, I mean, there's no emotions. You just got to go out there and do what you've done a million times. So a lot of that, you just kind of have to neutralize your feelings. So for me, it's really, where all the emotions come out would be going through the tunnel and just kind of, you finally have the feeling, everything you've done to this point has been worth it. Whether it's you only get one punt, no punts, all you get at the end of the day is the game check. But, you wore the jersey. You had your last name on the back. You represented for your family and all the coaches who have helped you through it. And I think that's your, I made it moment. Not so much, getting on the field, holding the ball or kicking or anything like that. It's just going out through the tunnel. I think that would be the special moment for me.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's well said. Coaches, family, everyone's really on your back running out with you in that moment forever in history. So let's make it a reality. Miami Dolphins, Stephen Ross. Once again, this is tuning in for Stephen Ross. This is your reminder. Cool, Juan. I mean, I don't know. Do you want to take us anywhere else to kind of close out this episode? Anything else you want to talk about, or what do you think?
No. This was awesome, man. It's I think one of the things that I love about doing this gig and having guests like yourself on this podcast is, again, just really hearing these stories about being inside the trenches. Because again, that's never something that I'll probably ever get to experience myself. So having that, listen, I was there, I know how it is, point of view, it's awesome to hear. So definitely appreciate your time, Kyle. Thank you so much for being here. This was awesome. I definitely learned a lot of things that I didn't know myself. So to kind of wrap us up, I'm definitely curious. Just give us right now, if you have at least one or maybe two, hottest takes for the NFL this year. What do you think?
I mean, I don't have many hot takes as far as the world of football goes, because I know if I make one thing and I get an opportunity with, let's say, that team, it will all of a sudden make me look like a jackass. So I don't necessarily have any hot takes. Now, one hot take I will have: if the Dolphins sign me, I will be a first-year All-Pro. So I mean, I'll just put that out there for them. But I mean, the ball's in their court. We'll see what they do with it.
Jake Bailey, you heard it here first, man. Like, you better appreciate that roster spot while you still have it, bro. That's all I got to say. No, man, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I mean, we're looking forward to seeing you out in at the Hard Rock Stadium, kicking well inside the 5-yard line consistently. I'm super hyped to see it, bro. No, I think that's it for me, bro.
All right. Cool. Well, thank you again, Kyle. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you made it this far, Sports Spectator Podcast. Peace, everybody.